guys, on today's show we take my Challenger RT in to get dyno tuned and running properly after installing our HRT Stage 2 cam from Comp Cams. And if you haven't had a chance to hear what the cam sounds like yet, so after we installed the cam, the first thing I wanted to do is hook up again with Chris from Player 3 Performance Tuning to make sure that we get a proper dyno tune and get the car running correctly after the install. So after a couple pulls on the dyno, Chris realizes that we have a problem. So the values that he was trying to input into this tune, for some reason the car wasn't responding to them. It was just doing whatever it wanted. And it appeared that we couldn't turn the neural network off. So after trying to mess with it a little bit, Chris asked if maybe I'd come back on Saturday for another dyno session, and he'd try to get on the horn with HP tuners and figure out if it was a software issue, what the deal was, and why we couldn't turn off the neural network so we could affect the volumetric efficiency, especially in the higher RPM, and get the values that we were looking for to get the car running properly. So I headed back out there on Saturday, and Chris had found the issue. So what did you have to do to get control of the phase limiter anyways? Is it just like a parameter that you had to like...
No, I just had to turn it off. I can't use, without having, I can't disable neural network and have VVT active.
Right.
It doesn't work.
So just turn VVT off.
That's how we're able to control the car.
I gotcha. So apparently for us guys with 09 and 010 Challengers and Chargers, instead of using a phase limiter like we did on this, you're supposed to use a phase lock to really lock out that VVT because the 09s and 010s apparently have had problems with the VVT and the spring when trying to do the phase limiting. So to fix this issue, Chris decided maybe we'd try turning VVT completely off. And when we did that, it allowed us to turn off the neural network. The only concern was turning VVT off. We were worried about, with that phase issue, we were worried about maybe the car doing some really weird stuff with timing. That was our initial concern, but it turned out that after we turned it off, the car actually responded really well and the timing seemed roughly stable. So no problems, we proceeded with the tune.
What? 99.76. Ah! 400.
99.76.
Yes. look at how flat it is. It's like, bam, power.
And all the way
up to like $6,000 or 6,400.
I'll take it. I will take it. Beautiful.
So after a few runs and a few tweaks, we were putting down 401 horsepower to the rear wheels and 403 pound-feet of torque. So the blue tune is my old tune with just my headers. So as you'll look here at the torque right here, before with just my headers, I was putting out right around 2,500 RPM. We were putting out 350 pound-feet of torque to the ground, right? Now with the new cam, even though it's more geared towards horsepower in the higher mid to higher upper RPM range, you do lose a little bit of torque, but it's still putting down 325, 330 pound-feet of torque. So I'm really only losing about 25 pound-feet of torque right down low. Now, especially if you look at the horsepower here, it's really almost identical all the way up until you hit about 4,300 RPM, and then suddenly that horsepower really dies with the other cam, and with this cam, it keeps shooting up. Now, this is that shelf that we're talking about, where it suddenly stops. Let's see how we've got a nice upper curve going all the way, and then suddenly it just literally flattens right at 400. So there's that restriction right here. Now if we didn't have that restriction, if you look, we're going to keep shooting up in this trajectory, and we're going to be somewhere in the 420 to 450 range with that cam before that arc comes out. But if you look, it flattens so abruptly there, completely flat. That is a problem that I have to sort out. But it also tells us we've got so much more horsepower left in that cam. Another cool thing is look how much more space we've got power, even right now, even with that shelf, over what I had before with just the headers tune. There's so much more power there under the curve. And let me tell you, you can definitely feel it when you drive the car, because right now the car is an absolute monster. After looking at that dyno graph, you could see up in the upper RPM range, there's definitely some restriction going on. The torque curve is going, and then suddenly it completely flattens out near the top. Now that's telling us that we definitely have some kind of restriction. Now Chris figured that it was probably something to do with that phase issue. He figured if we put a phase lock on there, chances are that torque curve would keep going up. And judging by the trajectory of that torque curve, we would probably be putting down an additional 20, maybe 30 rear wheel horsepower before that curve peaked out. So although 401 horsepower to the wheels is pretty sweet, there's still a lot more there that with a couple of tweaks, we're going to be able to get a lot more power out of this setup. Still though, that put us 27 rear wheel horsepower above what the last dyno tune we got was after I got my long tube headers installed, which is still a pretty good gain. But it's super exciting knowing that there's still 20 or 30 rear wheel horsepower waiting as soon as we kind of get a couple of the tweaks worked out and fix those restrictions. An additional 20 or 30 rear wheel horsepower is pretty significant. Now, if you factor in a drivetrain loss of about 15%, which a lot of people say, especially with the manuals, is roughly 15% drivetrain loss, at 401 rear wheel horsepower, that puts me at about 460 horsepower to the flywheel of the car, which is a pretty healthy figure. For the meantime though, that's a great starting point, and it's pretty impressive for only having two mods, long tube headers and a cam. Stock catback, stock everything else. Now I know there was a bunch of guys that had installed this cam, especially guys that were running automatics, like Donnie RT, who I was emailing back and forth with to try to solve some of the issues from his tune, and a handful of other guys who commented on my videos about having problems with idling and the car stalling when going slow, especially in parking lots and stuff like that. I can definitely tell you that after this dyno tune, my car runs super smooth. Having a manual, I didn't really have any worry about stalling the car too much, but it definitely had 1 or 2 second delay before it would catch its idle, which I'm thinking if you had an automatic at that point is when the car would likely try to stall. I can tell you that after you get that dyno tune, after we worked out the tweaks of our tune, the car idles like a dream now. It immediately catches its idle. It goes incredibly smoothly right back to idle. So any of you guys who are having really tough time after installing this cam and getting a remote tune done and can't get the car to drive properly in traffic, it keeps stalling on you, keeps sputtering, stuff like that, head to a dyno, get a proper dyno tune. Not saying that the guys who are remote tuning don't know what they're doing. Those guys are all really good. The Jay Greens, the Hemi Fever, those guys do know what they're doing, but they only have so much information to work with data logging, so they can only do so much to your tune. At least with a dyno tune, they can literally look at the entire picture, see exactly what's going on, and really properly tweak that car so that it's running properly. So I'm happy to report for you guys who are kind of worried, getting a little stressed out about, man, am I ever going to get this car to run properly after installing this cam? Yes, after my dyno tune, my car idles extremely smoothly. And in the next episode, I'm going to give you guys my driving impressions of the cam, and you can see for yourself how it goes back to idle, as well as how much of an absolute monster the car is to drive now. It is amazing the amount of power this thing puts out right now, and just the seat of your pants feel of the car. Super impressive. I cannot wait to take it out to the track. In fact, I will be doing so very shortly. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, please click like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll catch you later.